It was estimated that L. Ron Hubbard averaged upwards of 70,000 words per month whenever he on his way to being the most published and translated author in history. This is a feat that was completed in the days before computers, so it's really quite a lot of words to be having done. L. Ron Hubbard grew up in the early 20th century, traveling on United States Navy ships around the world, where he developed a passion for writing and his later discovery or techniques of Dianetics. Whenever he was younger, before he was even 10 years old, he was taking part in tribal ceremonies with the Blackfeet Native Americans in Montana. In college, he began to work as a freelance writer and photographer, where he later refined his techniques of Dianetics as an alternative to traditional medicine. He was born on March 13, 1911, and when he was 6 years old, a legend in the Blackfoot tribal community, says that L. Ron Hubbard was ushered into tribal ranks as a blood brother. At the age of 16, he boarded the USS President Madison and traveled to Japan and China, and finally ended up in Guam, where he began work at a photographic studio where his passion for photography began. He returned back to the United States and joined the National Guard 163rd Infantry in 1927, and the next year was on his way back to Guam, where he boarded a cargo ship and was the head of the cargo area for the ship, and traveled off the coast of China for 14 months, where while he was doing this, he fostered his sense of research and discovery that led him throughout his entire life. He attended George Washington University in the early 1930s, where he studied engineering and molecular physics. He had a lifelong question that he was always searching for the answer to, which pertained to the dynamic principle of existence. Somehow, throughout this time in college, he also managed to become a daredevil, free flight daredevil and a Midwest barnstormer. The Midwest barnstormers were the people that would fly the little crop planes, and they'd fly down, in the movies anyways, they'd fly down and they kind of zoom through the barns on the airplanes. He wrote a one-act, award-winning play entitled The God Smiles during this time in college, as well as working as a freelance writer and photographer for the Washington Herald. Later in the 1930s, whenever he averaged the publish rate of 70,000 words per month, he was writing mysteries, westerns, aerial thrillers, high seas adventures, and the occasional romance. It was during this time that he was put into the ranks of such great writers as Dashiell Hammett and H.P. Lovecraft, after being elected to the president of the American Fiction Guild's New York chapter. He currently still has more than 30 books that appear on international bestseller lists, and according to the Guinness Book of Records, he is the most published and translated author in the history. He even at one point had a Hollywood box office hit entitled The Secret of Treasure Island. After his short little stint in Hollywood, he conducted a few studies about his private passion dealing with the question of the dynamic principle of existence. It was during this time that he wrote his first philosophical work entitled Excalibur. This led to further research, which he improved his techniques of Dianetics. Dianetics it's the basis for Scientology. So he first tried it whenever he was recovering in the Oak Knoll Naval Hospital after an injury during World War I, or World War II, during World War II. He tried it on people that were just in the hospital, and he had overwhelming effects or results that he wasn't expecting, or that no one else was expecting. So he later went on and improved or refined his techniques using the Dianetics on basically anyone that would let him. He was a lay practitioner working in convalescent homes and probation offices and anything just kind of off the books. During this time, he refined his Dianetics, and in 1949, he published the book Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health. This book was on the bestseller list for 28 weeks, and it was considered the fastest growing movement in America. Later, he There were multiple Hubbard Dianetic Research Centers formed across the country. He was averaging more than 100 lectures a year during the early 1950s. It was in 1952 when he officially announced Scientology as a religion in the world. He published a book, Scientology, A History of Man. And after this announcement, his lectures were requested across the United States and all of Western Europe. One of his famous quotes for Scientology has to do with, it says, "Scientology does not teach you, it only reminds you, for the information was yours in the first place." His study technology from Scientology and Dianetics has been employed across entire school systems. It's been used in drug rehabilitation programs and has been credited with the salvation of at least 1 million terminal addicts. Currently, there are still some 400 U.S. mayors and governors that celebrate L. Ron Hubbard Day and Dianetics Day on his birthday, March 13th and May 6th. So Ron Hubbard, in all, he traveled the world when he was young and fostered his taste for photography as well as his background for writing and his techniques that he used in Dianetics. And in his later years, prior to his death, he lived for 3 years outside of any country's legal systems aboard his ship Apollo in the legal loophole of the international waters of the Seven Seas.